Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're all very privileged to hear this lecture from Father Hilary Martin. I thought I'd give a little introduction and then, so you all know Father Hilary and take away. So Father Hilary is an emeritus professor from here, the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology, emeritus professor of philosophy and theology. He earned his PhD in history of religion from UCLA in 1978. This was after earning a Master of Letters at Oxford in 1960, and also an MDiv and lecturer in theology at DSPT, also in 1960, which is also when he started teaching at DSPT. His academic career spans decades of teaching and research in church history, medieval theology, Thomistic philosophy, and comparative religion, and with a particular interest in councils of renewal, reunion, and reform, natural law theory, and Aboriginal religion. Of course, spent many, many years going back and forth between the United States and Australia, spending time with an Aboriginal tribe there. He is the author of the book, The Reality of Myth, 2000, and People to the Dawn, 2001, which you saw. We had a few copies, some of which have already been claimed, but there might be still a couple left for sale. So please join me in welcoming Father Hilary.
I'm so pleased to be here to be able to begin to talk about a group of people I've stayed with for all 4 years, and still know many of them, and their development in the last 10, 20 years has been quite remarkable again.
I'm sorry, is someone gonna turn off the lights so we can see better?
We're gonna put some pictures up later.
No, let's leave the lights as they are. I think we need to see each other.
Could you put the
I need to see what
microphone
I'm going to-
Father Hilary, yeah, we can't hear you very well.
There we go.
All right. So I said, let's go out back and visit the Murrinh Patha people. Now, the Murrinh Patha people have visited us once before in 1994. They came and gave a conference here, about 8 of them, and they were Aboriginal artists at the time. And we still have a red shirt, which is a reference to the things that they wore at that time. So they know about us. They led the St. Mary Magdalene. They led the profession in for the opening of Mass twice, which they enjoyed doing. And they quite liked living in California briefly. But at the end of 10 days, although they had many invitations to come to different places, they said, no, we're tired now, we want to go home. And so they refused them all after about 12 days. But they said they would come again if it were maybe possible. And I think that would be the case. So going back, if you go to Australia for a while and even a long vacation, and become friendly with someone who likes to go hunting or fishing or even just hiking, they'll eventually invite you to come to them to the Outback, which even for them, Australians, is a somewhat mysterious place. It is a place that is beyond the city, beyond the suburbs, and even beyond the farming tracts, which are surrounding the city. Because the Australians, of course, came onto the island or onto the continent and settled in the outskirts of the different places and gradually moved in, but never really moved in continually. But if you do go into an outback trip, you're going to find that you're in an island or something like a continent that is left over from the Cambrian reorganization of the continents. It's the only one that is still surviving from pre-Caribbean times. So they have a different kind of set of plants. They're all have a certain kind of DNA that is similar to Western or Asian plants. So they do have the same sort of trees, some hardwood, some more open. That's true, but they're different. And when they're brought to different parts of the world, they function differently. And other animals too are all different. You all know, of course, about the kangaroo, where the child is within the mother's perch and mother's pouch. Well, that sort of notion of a pouch and an infant within the pouch coming out different ways with different animals is generally true of all animals in Australia. The only one that is really different is the dingo, and that was brought into the country 60,000 years ago when human beings first entered the continents and crossed in from parts of the islands, from Indonesia, came down into the area around Queenstown and so forth, and settled there. But they are not a seafaring people. They're a land people. The Maori in New Zealand are, of course, seafaring people, but they're quite different people. And they have quite a different history. It's ancient too, but not quite as ancient as the Aboriginal native people are. 60,000 years ago, about the time when the continents were being reestablished again, like they are now, Australia was then cut off as the sea rose and cut Australia off from the rest of the world, really for quite a long time. You could get there, of course, if you really tried. There were places where it's only 60 or 70 miles between one coast and the next. But people just didn't do that. And as a result of that, Australia remained isolated and developed its own culture. And they really didn't like people coming into the continent or to come into the country with them, even from the beginning. And after colonialism, they were even less inclined to accept outsiders. If you accept their culture and accept their own brilliance, yes, you can be received in a certain sense and in a certain way, and people will be happy to have you around. But they were very annoyed, let's put it mildly, when the English came and announced that there was nobody there, therefore they could occupy the whole of the continent and all the property was theirs, and Aboriginals had no property at all because they weren't there. Well, someone noticed and said, well, you know, there are people there, perhaps 1 million people, but at least 700,000. But looking back at John Locke, you're not really there unless you're doing something to build up the land, cultivating it. Otherwise, you're just a tourist picking things off a tree. You're not really living there, are you really? No, you're just sort of there by accident. And they felt that all people that they met were simply living there by accident. So they occupied the whole of the continent and said that the Aboriginal people had no rights to any land at all. It had all been invested to the Crown. And the Crown then distributed the property to different people insofar as the Crown felt that was appropriate. Of course, the Crown, taking advice from Parliament and various other wealthy people, found out how to distribute it in the most careful way to support Aboriginal people, not Aboriginal people, but the people who took part and took over the land from them. So if you're taking a walk in the outback, you already know going into a kind of mysterious place. It's pre-Cambrian, and therefore the flora and the fauna are going to be different. The people you meet who are Aboriginal, and they're still living there after all this time, they are still there. You will meet them possibly in a friendly or they probably disappear so you can't see them. Don't notice any of them. But you would have a good time. And you would have a time of a mysterious entrance into a land that you might not have seen before. The Aboriginal people, like the Murrinh Patha, lived in small groups. They liked to do that. A family of father, mother, and then the brothers and sisters would form a kind of group, and they'd have certain cultural things that they undertook. There would be cousins, second cousins, once removed, twice removed. So the group would never get very large. 100, 300 was a fairly good type of place for an Aboriginal community like the Murrinh Patha to settle down for 100 years or a couple hundred years, and expect that their culture would be theirs, and would be recognized by other similar tribal groups elsewhere on the continent, but would not expect that it's going to be kind of universalized or generalized. It's better to be home at home than to be out and about in places you do not know about. When the white community first developed into Australia, they felt that Australian people were possibly human, possibly not human, or certainly their intelligence had not yet developed. They didn't have a very difficult language, and they certainly didn't have a mind that would contemplate something as abstract as God or the gods. That would really be beyond their ability, which they felt was limited, I guess, to sensation or things that come immediately out of sensation. Forget all that. Forget all of those articles, even in the Encyclopedia Britannica from the last century. They're a mistake. First of all, the languages were not known by the explorers and those who came into the country. Aboriginals have a language, usually for each tribal group, not simply dialects, but completely different languages among all of these people. And the Murrinh Patha language, which they call the language, Murrinh Patha, the good language, is very inflected, more inflected than German. You have to know if you're going fishing, whether it's with your brother, with a woman present, with a large group of people present, and that is going to affect the verb, and it's going to affect everything else in the sentence. They felt children, when they get to be 18, 19, 20, can learn the language, but before that, they're sort of on the learning curve. They really don't expect outsiders to speak Aboriginal very well, not in a kind of formal and high level tone. Yes, they did have language. They had a very complicated language. They also had ideas of God. They also had lots of dances, lots of songs, lots of arrangements that indicated they were referring to God. They were referring to the master of the universe. However, their sense of God and their sense of religion was quite different than what we would normally think of. Now, if you think of God, if you're a Westerner, or even if you have Eastern backgrounds in religion, you think of God as something that is skyward. Our Father, who is in heaven, is the Lord's Prayer. Hallowed be your name, and have things on earth like they are in heaven. So the ideal format is heavenly, and there are galaxies, one after the other, going into infinite space. We now know so many more of them than we did then. Remember, the Romans just had a planetary system of 9 planets and one sun god. Well, we've gotten much better than that, but we still think of God as centralized within a spiritual level that goes into a vast, extensive place. Aboriginals don't think of God, or do not think of any metaphysical being like that. What is important is the land. The land is, of course, the center of everything. You look down into the land to find the roots of life and the roots of reality. The land is one. There is only one land in every direction, or any direction, forward, backward, or upward. It is one. The land carries everything with it. It is eternal. The land is eternal, and it does not change. You know, in order to change, you have to have things move. When you're walking along, you have several steps as you walk along the landscape. Time is what happens between those steps because there's motion, because you can discover that there is 1, 2, 3. But when land is eternal and complete, there's no motion because there's no change. And so they thought of the whole of Earth as in fact a single large expanse. And they did believe that in the land, it was always the same. The surface of the land was always the same. It never changed. It was a glassy place, and within that, you would have the same surface all the time. They also believed that there were if you looked into the land itself as land, there were no features. It was like a single plane, flat, going in generation from age to age. If someone said, well, if you think of that, you'll think of walking off the land and falling off it. I said, oh, no, not at all. As you walked along to the edge, what you thought was the edge, new land would simply appear to support your continuation. There's no danger of falling off.
Mm.
Well, the sea, of course, structures land. The seas, of course, come around and hold the land in. Oh, no, that's the wrong way about. The land, in fact, controls the seas. The seas are, in fact, measured and controlled by the land. The land is primary, seas are not. Seas are some function of land. And so you would see that if you're going to talk about some kind of overarching metaphysical being, it's going to be land, just land. In land, however, there are powers. And I'm going to talk about another concept which is mentioned frequently to visitors about the dreaming. The dreaming is very significant. The land itself, animals, plants, human beings, have a kind of dreaming sense about them. Now, the first thing to drop is anything about Freud or psychology. And dreaming has nothing to do with that, not the words that the Australians are using. In fact, it's been suggested that they use the word dreaming in order to condition whites to try to understand what they were talking about. Because dreaming is difficult even for them. But to think of it as dreams that you dream at night, no, they dream at night too, and analyze them just like we do. No, when they talk about dreaming, it's something else. There is power in the land. There is power in different parts of the land and in different ways. There are images of the initial qualities of the universe, coal or something like that, or a kangaroo, or a marsupial mouse, or any number of things in the land have a kind of point of power that's local and particularly theirs. And it is dreaming. It has been an eternal slumber, an eternal dreaming for ages and ages and ages. In fact, for all time, because the land never changes. not even in a million years, because it is unfixed for any change, unsettled for any change. But these powers are somewhat divided. There are small powers of different sorts. Some of them reflect the formality of something as banal as the kangaroo, or as banal as a bird, or a fish, a particular kind of fish, would have its own form or its own way of being, or at least its own similar way of being. There were millions of these within the land itself, an eternal dreaming, they would argue. And at a certain point in history, or a certain point in time, not in time, that would be a bad way of thinking of it, but at a certain moment, because there is no time, at a certain moment, they emerge onto the surface of the planet that we have, and began to shape and to form it. Now, these particular beings, as they entered into the flat surface of the earth, which had no particular significant differences at first, gradually would be shaped and formed. These particular dreaming figures, some of them were animals, some of them were plants, some of them were human beings. They would first surface and live the life and the form that they would have lived or should have lived from the way in which they were produced, or their power was presented in the land itself, in the dreaming. The dreaming time they would begin when they were on the surface of the earth, and they would begin to shape it. Some would begin to build up hills. Some would begin to lower land. Some would trace rivers to the sea. Some would trace the seas. Some others would then develop a kind of plant that lived in a particular place, but had similar forms elsewhere. Pretty soon, the land would begin to look very much as it does today. That is, with all different sorts of activities that would come out of the land and out of the dreaming. The dreaming was, of course, something that was present, and we don't want to think of it, I think, as a conscious activity only. It is an activity of a being that has a form and has a way of handling that form. So, for example, a snake has a kind of aura about it that scares mice, marsupial mice, and that happens all the time. But even women fear snakes. So whatever they have is a kind of part of their being. That's necessary to have snakes in the world, necessary to have them. There are some pictures of the Outback, which I've passed over, but you would have, for example, a picture of a snake, which is, of course, an ideal snake, but it would have certain kinds of characteristics and certain kinds of formalities. And I think we do have a picture of this.
We can see it, Father Hilary.
Oh, you can see it, all right. That's good. We have some others as well. These are, of course, drawn. These are dreaming pictures of a dreaming, but they're not real, not really real, or they are really real, and what we are is not real. But they are dreaming snakes, and they have a story attached. All dreamings have a story attached to them, which explains what they do and why they're there. Although the land is always flat and was without any form or character, it now has a complete form and character. And you can often see, if you're in a plane overlooking a part of the Northern Territory, you can see where a river has gone down to the sea. You can see some red spots along the particular land that you're flying over. They happen to be copper mines. But those red spots were cases in a story in the Dreaming in which there were two battles fought after a party in the Northern Territory in the Murrinh Patha area. Those particular fights, those particular cases are over, of course. They're historical, they're dead. However, they survive in a certain way in the fact that they still have an existence in the physical world of that river, which now has a kind of substitute redness in the material and minerals that exist there. The world is like that. The Dreaming reflects the reality of the life that is now with us. That life will come and change, of course, as it does, but it will always go back, in some ways, we might say now, to a dreaming level that was always going to be there. We now perhaps speak of NRA or as the way in which forms control a life and control the way things are going. Now, the original priority of the continent were left remaining, when in other continents they were reconfigured. But as I said, there was power in the land. There's power in all lands, but the Australian land, Precambrian, sees its power as more significant than any others, and the archetype of the forces within that land are its own particular way of being. The archetypal dreaming kangaroo has traveled, when it traveled during the dream time, when all things came out of the earth and formed the earth as we now know it. The kangaroo during that particular dreaming period left behind bits and pieces of itself, bits and pieces of its hide, bits and pieces of saliva, for example, its refuse, and where it had a battle and lost blood, it left some of that behind as well. Those particular bits and pieces also have that particular ability to reconstruct and reform other kangaroos later on in the history of the human community on the planet, or I'd say the human community, that is the living community on the planet. Some of these forms, like the Murrinh Patha, which became a tribe in Northern Territory, or some of these particular places contained human beings too. The powers of the land, in some cases, produced human beings, which had the power, of course, of changing things in many different ways, and would be able to interfere with the climate of the world as a whole. An ancestral figure may have created your tribe, at least created the ability of that tribe to begin and to exist. But when it did, when that land was given by an ancestral being in the dreaming, in the land, it would have given you with it enough land to feed your people and to keep them healthy. And you were on the land that would then be able to support you. If you were, of course, an animal, you would also have enough of that kind of fodder to support that animal life. And so life was again produced from the dreaming and produced out of the power of the land itself, which gathered all sorts of groups together. And these groups sometimes got along pretty well. Sometimes the groups and tribes would fight each other. Sometimes they would be careful about preserving the land. Sometimes they would be uncareful with that. Their activity would help or hinder the function of the dreaming, the function of the goodness of the land. The land then had the water that it offered an animal, or the good things that it offered a human being, like copper or iron ore or other things. Those particular things then would be yours if they were on your land, or if it was food, it would be yours if it was on your land. You had an obligation then to maintain the land in all its fullness and all its goodness. Because you see, the land was given to you, was given to no one else. You had the right to exclude others from your land because it was your own. But it was also an obligation on your part to maintain the land in a good way. If you did, your tribe would progress, and so would you, and you would be taken care of by the land. In a sense, you did not own the land, although it was yours and no one else's. You did not own the land owned you. You were a servant to the land, and the land, in a sense, was primary, and its dreaming power also was primary, and therefore the land itself was to be protected at all costs. And if someone else entered the land without your permission, which sometimes happened, because there was trading of a primitive sort, even in the middle 16, 15, 14, 1300s, there were certain characters that made painting very good, certain qualities of parts of the land, which made it possible for you to trade with the qualities of land that you had with that of others. So there was a tendency to move and wander around the land in a certain way in order to have what we would say a kind of primitive economy. Although most people stayed at home. Most people were content with the land to live on it and to develop it and to maintain their own family and their family relations. Relations and family relations, yes, these are always very significant and central here to preserve the dreaming that you are given and that you possess. There is a story attached to most of the land that you're given, an ancestral figure, and I will refer to one or two of the stories just to give you an example. The individual families like to celebrate and like to enjoy life, like to enjoy each other, like to enjoy the men and the women as they grew older and as they grew up. Sometimes, people found they wanted children. They desperately needed children. However, sometimes, children can be a pain.
Yes.
And so there is a story, one of them, that the group they went to a sea place, a lovely beach, a famous beach, an old-time beach, which had hieroglyphs already. They had brought with them, they agreed to have a party together. They would be hunting or fishing or maybe dancing and so forth. But they did want the children to be playing childhood games somewhere else. So they planned to leave the children behind on the beach and to go off into different directions and do what they wanted to do. What are they going to leave the children with? because no one volunteered to stay behind. Well, they found a snake woman on the beach, an old woman who was obviously some kind of a creature, a dreaming creature. You can see that. And they said, well, she agreed. She was not angry. She was not angry. She said, oh no, I'll take care of them. I'll take care of them. So they all went off. When they left, the woman, who was of course a figure from the dreaming itself, coaxed the children to come into her mouth. And pretty soon she had eaten them all. So there were no children on the beach when the parents came back. Well, there was a snake woman, but no children. What to think of? One infuriated elder man knew what he thought of it, and he cut off the woman's head, the snake's head. Tied it off. And all the children came out alive. Yes. So that's a story of never entrust children to someone else, even a crotchety and wise old woman. And so that is a kind of story about that particular tribe or that particular case. Now, obviously, it is not a real story entirely. It is real in the dreaming sense, though, and is going to have a great deal of power. There are all sorts of dreaming stories. Two women from Mallorca wanted to get some food for fish, food for dinner. There was a stream going by. They jumped in, tried to grab the fish, but the fish, dreaming fish, and the women all drowned. That is painted in many ways as be careful of what you see, be careful of what you go to for. Now, the whole of the stories are very often told to people. The one I mentioned just a few moments ago is a general story. The people from the Northern Territory have allowed that particular story to escape, to become publicly known. But dreaming stories on the whole are not public. They're known by a family. They may tell other families about it. They may be only known by a single person. It's dangerous to know too much. When you are given the land, when you're given the particular food and grain around the land, you're also given the dances you are to dance and the songs you are to sing. And if you do that, you take care of the land. But if you don't, you fail in a serious way to maintain the land that you were given. So you'll find a lot of activity that we would say is pleasant, seems to be busy and active, is in fact religious. Religious in the sense it has to be done, or certain things will not occur. And so the Aboriginals, when the whites first came, told them that they were a very religious people. The whites were saying that they didn't have enough mind to have any religion. The Aboriginals said they thought the incoming colonialists had no religion because they never did the same thing twice, and they were very unkind. And so that development, for a long time, when the people did not think the Aboriginals were really human beings, the colonialists poisoned them sometime, got into fights and killed them. They had guns, and the Aborigines did not. And so they learned quickly to conceal their religious beliefs or their religious stories from newcomers. They may tell you something. They may tell you something that's not quite right. But they will be very careful about sharing their religious undertakings. There are some things, however, that I would like to mention before. I don't want to talk on too long, because we want to have some discussion afterward. But what time have we left for two stories?
I think you can tell your stories.
Okay. There is the spirit child. Aboriginals have noticed that very often upon a birth, the child would have a mark, really long mark of some sort, or another kind of mark, which resembled very much the same marking that appeared in another family member, or even perhaps a stranger, that would reflect a careful combination of events between those two individuals. There is a spirit child that part of the person, part of their spirit, part of their nature, that's in both persons. And so there's a relation between them. There's even a ceremony for that, indicating to the rest of the community that a relationship exists between these two. One may be an adult, the other may be a child. They may both be the same size or the same sort of group. And so therefore, they are in relation with one another, and they're always to be careful of each other in any public way. Another spirit child is more serious, and that is, where do we come from as individuals? The dreaming spirit does not necessarily produce every individual. In fact, doesn't at all. What happens is a woman has a child, and they are within the pouch of the woman. The marsupial mouse also has such an arrangement. The kangaroo, of course, has an arrangement in which we recognize the child coming out of the pouch of the kangaroo. The kangaroo, in some ways, is always pregnant because when one is ready, can't come back into the housing anymore of the Aboriginal patch. Another one is already being formed. That's true for kangaroo, but others also are looking for a place where they can grow and develop and come forward. That's even true of human beings, although these are a Catholic group and they would modify that idea very much. But a person toward the end of life looks for some place which is where they came from. They want to go back to the place where they first entered into the physical world. Perhaps they were living in their spirit child was living in a swamp. And someone came by, another human being, another woman who was desirous of a child, and the child entered into that particular woman and then grew up, was part of that tribe, and lived another life in that particular tribe and in that particular place. But maybe it didn't always happen that way. Sometime the womb that passed by was of another animal, of another species. The child would live a different life, become some kind of perhaps one of the spirit snakes we've talked about already, or maybe have some kind of structure of a fish and would live that particular kind of life. Toward the end of life, that person or that individual would again seek to have a replacement. It would have to wait sometime in its initial place for a long time when an appropriate womb came by that might be able to receive or accept them. The spirit child then would be out of the earth, out of the life of the earth entirely during that particular time. It would wait, consciously or not, I don't know, but it would wait and wait and wait, perhaps a long time, perhaps not. But when the appropriate time came, it would succeed in entering the womb of another creature, of another person, and live another life. That is another human life with all of its ups and downs, or another Aboriginal life, another kangaroo life with its ups and downs. its possibility of being shot, its possibility of having to have a rather boring existence in another kind of form. So life would consist in a series of continuous lives. Well, reincarnation, they don't like, Catholics will not talk about that. They don't like that. They regard it as something that's not true. But it is still one of the ways in which you explain the continuity of those markings that you see in different people that are so similar.
I'm
Or
sorry,
if-
what would they regard as not true? You said they wouldn't like that, they wouldn't regard it as true, but I didn't catch what that was. You just said it. I'm sorry to take you off your, is anybody else here?
I think, then you mean the continuous life, that Catholics didn't think that the continuous life existed?
we wouldn't believe that you had, that the goal of the human community was to have a series of separated lives. Or of an Aboriginal community, or of a kangaroo community, to have a continuation of different sorts of lives. Catholics would not accept that, and they don't like to talk about that particular dreaming story. It's a dreaming story, of course, and it solves the issue of how you can have similar markings of the spirit child in different kinds of people or different kinds of animals or even plants. Explain that relationship is of the spirit child. The spirit child itself has to find another life in order to live outside of a dreamy or dreamless existence for a period of time. I had one person come to me, a friend of mine, saying how happy he was that he was Christian. He said, what we have is the resurrection. We do not have to return again to life. We can leave it entirely behind
Oh,
and live a resurrected life once and for all. So his Christianity then was based, well, he was baptized, of course, but his dreaming discussion would be based entirely on resurrection theory. And he was very passionate about it, explaining it that way. Whether that was something he just told me, maybe that is generally accepted in his community, but I would not know about it. The power in the land is primary. The land takes many shapes and forms. It has many different stories about it. The stories about it reflect the power that lies in land and in the different individuals, the archetypal individuals, both human and non-human, that emerge out of the dreaming and out of the land during the course of thousands of years, because dreaming does not go on forever, although children and so forth, and the life that we live is thousands of years old. But the dreaming itself, the dreaming ancestors, which emerged during the dream time to shape the life we now see and know, at a certain point they went back in. They were tired of meditating or moderating the life that they created, the physical world in which we live. So they went in. When they went in, they left some of their power in the hands of dreaming figures who would continue their particular work in life. But they themselves returned to their eternal slumber. That meant an unchanging time in which their power would remain, but it would not, in fact, be used or seemingly useful. So Aboriginal religion, it has many different aspects, many different shades, has lots of songs, lots of liturgy in the sense of songs, dances, and clapsticks, and various kinds of examples of stories of writing before Happy Wugo's death as a dreamy picture. There may be four of the dugongs somewhere in Queensland that live nearby and are happy. On the other hand, the drawing is of their ancestral life, not of them. You'll find here a picture, however, much more of people simply enjoying their family and enjoying their particular place where they are. We have overhead.
Any of these we can put overhead. And then we have the small pictures over there.
Okay, what are the two that are overhead?
I don't have anything right now. What would you like?
Oh, there's nothing overhead?
There's nothing overhead. There hasn't been for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Austin's the snake.
Well, let us put this one here, which is again, part of the drinking story. And let's do one of Ballroom Man.
Which one?
Ballroom Man,
This one here?
this one and the other one.
Yeah.
Wallaroo Man was a person. There's a second picture here.
This, no.
There we are. Wallaroo Man came into a lake area.
Yeah, that's up there.
Okay, and he was looking for a countryman. But he
What?
entered, he was looking for a countryman, and he entered an area that was not his. And someone noticed that he wasn't belong, didn't belong there. And so this is a picture of him weeping over the fact that he's been discovered and it's on someone else's land. And someone else comes by and says, "You're black, I don't like you, get out of here." And he said, "Well, I'm only looking for countrymen, I'm only looking for my countrymen." He said, "Well, I don't like you, get out of here." And so he doesn't get out of there fast enough for that man, who picks up a spear and picks up a large instrument and whacks him over the head and knocks out, you can see all the blood and so forth, because he has violated the law. He's entered someone else's territory without permission. And saying that he's just doing something that is quite ordinary, I'm looking for my countrymen, that's not enough. He should have asked permission to get on the land in the first place. He apparently didn't do that, and so he is hit on the head and dies. And then the next picture, which is not here, he's someone flat out, lying on that land, where he will lie forever, because he has now entered into their dreaming in their terms and in their way. So don't enter into someone else's land without permission. It's very serious.
Yeah.
However, if you want to, or you've done so and you've noticed it, the first thing to do is to start a fire. That is a family fire, and sit next to it until someone comes from that particular tribe to offer you hospitality or to tell you to leave. And if you do that, you have done enough so that they have no right to attack you. They just have the right to ask you to leave gently and quickly and right away. However, they may actually say, "Well, you've done this, so forth, you come onto the land. Well, you can stay for a day. We can show you around for 2 days," or something like that, and everything will end out well because you have received permission to be on that land for a certain time. If you do things like that, make your presence clear, that your intentions are helpful, that your intentions are not going to be harmful, and you're not a spy for another company, not a spy for another land or another place, because very often there are people that are coming to steal your land in one way or another, either by stealing the dreaming or by simply coming in with a rifle and taking it away. Now, they were not having any Wallaroo Man at all, and he gets to stay there, but in the terms of their dreaming. And he never finds any countrymen either. Don't think either that life in a pastoral situation in the hunter-gatherer period was peaceful and happy, and that people were simply doing work as gardeners, helping each other out in the garden. No, it was a violent place and a violent time. And here is a picture of some of the spears that are appropriate to use. These are spears that will go into a person and cannot be pulled out without pulling out most of the rest of their insides. The most dangerous one is this one, because it's most difficult to extract if you want to take it out and have the person survive. So dreaming is enforceable by dreaming actions, but it's also enforceable by very real actions too. So if you take a trip out back, today you probably will not see many of these events. The civilization, as we know it, has taken over that part, and Aboriginals don't act in that way. However, there have been cases where songs have been sung in the wrong place, and when some drunk was singing this song that he had heard during one of his corroborees, and he wasn't supposed to be doing that. He was a sort of a person that was not easily controlled in any event. So he was hit over the head with a lead pipe and died. We went to court. The Australian Civil Court heard the defense and heard the level of the prosecution. The defense argued that this man had done that, had hit the other man that way, because it was his duty to do that, to protect his culture. The judge said, well, you do have the right to do that. You're innocent, you're free.
No.
Oh.
This is a civil judge in a civil court. But it's an example, yes.
Oh, I just when you're done for the Q&A, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Like to show? I think my one's done already.
I would like to show this one, who is the first Aboriginal deacon, Roman Catholic deacon. Oh, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, he was a friend of mine, because he's very helpful when I was living there. And he would be the one you always would go to for advice. And there are a couple other deacons there now. He's passed away, but he does look like the person that gives good advice, warm advice, and he was like that. And his beard, yes, he did have a beard that was exceptional. Another one I would like to show. This is a map of a place where I went picnicking with a friend of mine. You'll notice that there are 3 spots. There are water holes. This is a dry part of the country, and these are water holes. The water holes are being protected by 2 water snakes, which will prevent the water from being misused or taken away by someone else. There are also the dreaming place of 1 or 2 other animals. The dreaming place of a roo, that is a kangaroo, would be one, and a dreaming place of 2 other major animals of the district. And this was drawn for us by William Pembroke, who is an artist. and was one of the 94 artists that came here at the time. And he drew this for me. He has done this in other ways too for other people. But it's a very good, it's still on my wall in my home, in my room. But it's still a very powerful statement again of it's a dreaming story of a way in which the life can be protected, and in which things like water holes or places can be figured, and you would not necessarily know. They could be nests, for example. The 3 nests they could have been, but I happen to know they're water holes. They have protection around them and protection of the land between them. And this is part of his dreaming place. So I'd like to leave you, of course, with the idea of the land as the center of their philosophy, if you want to speak of that, but as the center, of course, of the way in which we have eternal or metaphysical understanding. It is in the land, not in the sky. The sky is created later. There are no stars at the beginning. They're added later. And there's not very much interest of having stories about the stars. The only one that has a significant story is what we call the Pleiades, which in the north, again, the story is somewhat similar. But they wouldn't know, there's no North Star, for example, in the southern hemisphere. They have to use a triangular system in order to navigate. And as I said, Aboriginal people are not a seafaring people. They use they would go onto the shore and catch clams and other kinds of animals of that sort, but they would not really often go out to sea. They would have a small shipping prow, but not very interesting, in the sense they didn't spend much time with them. So the land is one concept I think is worth remembering. The other is the dreaming, which is difficult to understand. In the dreaming, all things occur, all things of importance happen. That's expressed in the physical world when the dreaming figures have what they call dream time. And dream time is when everything is produced as it is today, as we see it today. And dream time involves the dreaming of individuals and the stories that they tell each other, or they conceal from each other about how things are to be arranged and how things happened and why they happen the way they do. These are only 3 major concepts in the Aboriginal religion that I wanted to talk about. There are other matters as well. Some of the Protestant and Catholics have converted or brought to Western points of view very largely a religion that we would recognize. But when you ask later about it, it has a different root. So are there any questions?
I have 2 questions, Father Hilary. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear you speak. It's been a while. The last talk I heard you give was at St. Mary Magdalene after the Dominicans left, before the COVID pandemic. And during that time, you spoke about the land, and you reiterated some of that here, in that land is not owned, the idea of ownership of the land. You went through the whole history, your Western history of land ownership. And as you just said today, land is not owned by the people. The land owns the people. So that leads to my first question.
Yes.
You mentioned the sites of former wars where there's still red splotches. Most in Western countries, at least, most wars are over land.
Yes.
So if they each have their own land, and presumably they go back centuries and thousands of years in that land. What is the source of their conflict? And secondly, I'd like to know how it was that they came to accept Christianity,
Well,
which was so
that-
foreign.
Accepting Christianity is different, of course, in each case. There's a very special case in the one of Murrinh Patha. It's an appearance of Our Lady that before the missionaries came, that convinced them that what the missionaries said would be true. So that was the way in which, but that there's a story attached to that. The first question you ask, well, if you wipe another tribe out, kill its population, then assume its land area, and eventually find out something about the dreaming stories that the land requires, land can be moved. I know of stories where gradually people intermarried or they gradually got permission to stay, that they were related somehow already. They got permission to say pretty much the old stories were forgotten. The new stories became primary. And so there was a transfer of land. In a sense, there was a transfer of the dreaming.
But what were they fighting about? Why were they killing each other?
No, this is well, not every transfer was like that. The transfer that I was talking about mostly was a peaceful transfer, in which one family more or less took over the land of another. And while the people do remember and don't like that particularly, they feel that the old dreaming stories have been forgotten and they're no longer effective. No one knows them. That's that case. The case where they actually had a fight. Well, there are lots of stories in which there is a battle between two tribes, and all the men and all the heirs are killed at the end. But there's one old woman or one old man that survives, and therefore the wars go on into another generation. However, those are stories of how things were not quite finished. But there are cases, obviously, where you don't remember the group that died out. So you'd have to find out about that from historians of the tribe. And the tribal historians are probably not likely to tell you if they're the only ones left and one. Yeah.
When the Aboriginals first came there 60,000 years ago, Australia was very different. It was
Oh, yes.
more lush. Is any of that reflected in their deep Dreamtime stories?
Probably is, yes. We also have a lot of hieroglyphics, which they're animals that have ceased existing. One of the canine animals, there's a picture of it on a rock, which is quite good. But there are some levels of bones and so forth of that animal can still be found, but they're dead. It's an extinct animal. However, it was being painted to about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Well, yes, you have some things like that. When the Aboriginals entered the continent for the first time, apparently had a language already and a culture already. They apparently, there's evidence of them going through the islands of Indonesia into New Zealand and into that area, New Guinea, and then stepping off. But now there's a story of the New Guinea leaders wanting them to start gardens. Now, New Guinea gardens are everything. The gardens are a sort of cultural root of activity. Well, they were stories and songs already indicating that they were not interested in being gardeners. They weren't going to do that. But I mean, if you want to, you'd have to do research to bring the stories forward.
They now think that they were related to the people who are now in New Guinea too, though, right?
Oh, well, yes, they probably were.
They were the first exit from Africa.
Yeah, the first exit from Africa before Europe.
Wait,
Yes, of course. But they're the oldest existing continuous culture. The Aboriginals are, all the others have been a discontinuity. They would argue. And of course, their own DNA is different. Okay, oh, yes.
Hi, really, really great talk. I really enjoyed it. I have a question regarding, the system of morality that this tribe had. Like, in your time visiting them, did you find that their ethical systems, their morals are different than, I guess, Western civilizations, or what did you find regarding that?
Well, you have, of course, a lot of rules that are coming to you through the dancing and through the songs. And they would be the primitive things you're supposed to do, not to. For example, it is determined whom you're going to marry, probably very early in your life, or not perhaps when you're not yet born. Because there are only only a certain number of people, or women, or men, that you can marry because of the dreaming. The dreaming brings up an incompatibility. For you can't, well, we say you can't marry your first cousin several generations worth because it's not going to be very good. And in California, you can't marry your first cousin. It's against the law. And there's nobody to give nobody to give a dispensation either. You're Catholic, you can go get a dispensation in a vision, but not. But there are laws of morality that you would find in the stories themselves. They indicate what you should do, what you can do, and what is inappropriate. And if you do things that are inappropriate, you lose your reputation. And you may, if you've hurt someone, stolen something, you'll certainly have to get it back. Now, you'd say getting property back is a Western idea. Well, I think that's, I mean, getting your property back is pretty instinctual.
How would you account, or how did they account for these white English people arriving? It must have been an absolute nightmare of a
Well,
dream.
you know,
How would they have understood it, or how would they have articulated in their faith system this invasion of them?
well.
But they couldn't have abided by any of their laws, rules.
First of all, they
religions,
came.
or culture.
First of all, they came. There was some reconciliation. At the beginning, they got along a little bit. But it became obvious that they were going to lose their land as the new people coming in were building houses they couldn't compete with. They were bringing in horses they didn't have before. Some of these things were traded, and so people for a while didn't realize that the aggression of those coming in. Now, these were, as you know, the English, French were involved in Australia briefly, but during the Napoleonic War. But the British told the French ambassador that the English had annexed the entire continent to the crown. Okay, now what the crown, they recognized pretty quickly that the crown meant authority, and the authority had its agents. So what did they make of them? Well, they just made of them another tribe that was invading them and was stronger.
They just saw them as another tribe.
Tribe that was stronger. I don't know that there's much theology or what did we do wrong that we deserved the English. I don't think.
Well, a lot of us could say that.
Yes, some people from Ireland, maybe.
So, but I don't know. I don't have to know the any direct sub-secondary thoughts about that. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about the dreaming ancestor? I'm trying to wrap my head how central it is to the Aborigines. And then compare it with the Christ figure as central. I'm trying to understand the dreaming
Well,
ancestors' importance for them.
First of all, it's difficult to see that you have a number of powers that seem to be independent of each other. The dreaming, the land is one, so you say that it's a unified system. And the dreaming, of course, is power in the land. But it's not like a Christ figure at all. It's a different way of working. So the dreaming is a difficult concept. It's the power that the land has. And it is said to be an Aboriginal word used to accommodate the whites. In other words, it's about the best they could do. And you can't quite figure it out now. And they would say, well, we tried. So, but it is power.
So it's at 8:45. Do you think we should do maybe one more question and then?
Oh, yes, that's right, because you go on to eat something. Did you?
Couple, what is their idea of happiness? And the second is, do they have, what's the concept, is there a notion of the afterlife?
Oh, yes, it's a series of afterlives. You live one after the other.
Too many afterlives.
That's why the resurrection, at least for this particular person, was in fact to solve the whole question. If everyone was resurrected, we wouldn't have to go through this. Now, the first question you asked was,
What is that? Concept of happiness.
I think having a good day. I think having a good day, a series of good days would be happiness.
What would that look like though?
Oh, well, if you were gone out fishing and you would have captured some of the biggest fish you've ever seen, and then I came home and had a nice meal with the rest of the family, you'd be happy. I was here, you know.
No, that's it. We could finish if you like. I think that was gonna be the last question.
Okay. You can ask me when we have something to eat.
All right. And I think there's still a couple books over there if you'd like to buy a book.
Okay. Now, we also had someone I wanted to talk to about tomorrow. The exalted master from St. Columba. Tomorrow, I take the place. Okay, at 8 o'clock, yeah, no, that's clear.
Make it valid.
Then the next day, the next day